Hello, dear listeners. My name is Eleanor Whitford, now 83 years old, and what you are about to hear isn't just a story about betrayal. They were in bed, my husband and my own brother. My broken heart gave birth to a woman no one ever imagined I could be. A woman forged in the ice of the North and the fire of humiliation. If this story has touched you so far, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? I love to know how far my memories can travel. It's comforting to know my voice can cross oceans and mountains, even when my body can barely cross the garden. Now, let's go back to 1963, to the day my life ended, and the new Eleanor was born. Willow Ridge, Montana back then was the kind of place postcards love and secrets suffocate. A small town, squeezed between jagged peaks and pine forests, so dense they swallowed the sunlight. Bone-chillingly cold in the winter and surprisingly hot in the summer. It was a place where everyone knew everything about everyone. Or at least, they thought they did. They certainly thought they knew all about me. I was Mrs. Whitford. I was 27 when I married Richard Whitford, the man I believed to be my safe harbor. In Willow Ridge, Richard wasn't just a man, he was an institution. The owner of Whitford Timber Co. The roar of his logging trucks was our town's soundtrack. The smell of sawn pine was the perfume of our prosperity. He was the king, and I was his quietest adornment. People admired him blindly. He was tall, with that dark blonde hair that fell perfectly over his forehead, and an easy smile he handed out like currency. He was 35, 8 years older than me, and he wore that age gap like a badge of his superiority. He's the kind of man who makes a woman feel safe just by standing next to him, I heard Mrs. Gable from the bakery say once. Safe, what an ironic word. I fell in love with him, or rather, with the idea of him, on the second day we met. I was in the town library, hidden behind a pile of poetry and history books, trying to shield myself from the snow coming in through the poorly sealed window. He saw me, and his voice cut through the dusty silence of the library. "You look like someone the world deserves to hear." I laughed, a nervous laugh from someone not used to being noticed. I always laughed with him, in the beginning. He had that power to make you feel like the center of his universe before reminding you that he was the universe. 12 months later, we were married in a simple ceremony in my grandmother's garden. The smell of lavender and the hum of bees. I swore, with all the innocence in the world, that this man would take care of me forever. The first few years were acceptable. I convinced myself they were good. We had the biggest house on Main Street, a new car every 2 years. I organized Richard's business dinners. I smiled at his partners, served the expensive whiskey, and remained silent while they decided the town's fate with their cigars. Richard liked to show me off. "My Eleanor," he would say, his hand heavy on my shoulder. "She reads all those books, but she's smarter for staying quiet. Isn't that right, darling?" And everyone would laugh, and I would smile, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. I was the perfect wife, the porcelain doll on his shelf. But in 1963, the cracks in the porcelain began to show. Richard started traveling more. "Expanding the business," he'd say. Trips to Helena, Missoula, and then further, all the way to Seattle. He would come back days later, exhausted, but with a feverish glint in his eyes. And he would come back smelling of women's perfume. Not one perfume, several. Sometimes it was floral, sometimes it was heavy musk. Scents that didn't belong in our home, that didn't belong to me. I found lipstick-stained tissues in the bottom of his bags, receipts from restaurants he never mentioned. I pretended not to notice. What else could I do? In Willow Ridge, 1963, what does a wife do when her husband is the town? I kept busy. I tended the house, I read my books, and I tried, desperately, to believe in the facade he had built for us. Then, in the middle of that stuffy summer, my only brother, Alexander, returned. Alex was my opposite. Where I was quiet and withdrawn, he was volatile and loud. Just 23, handsome in an almost dangerous way, with the same dark eyes as me, but with a flame in them I never had. He had gone to California to try his luck in engineering projects, and, as expected, failed spectacularly. He came back to Willow Ridge with his tail between his legs, without a penny to his name. I welcomed him into our home with open arms. He had always been my best friend in childhood, my protector against the world. I set him up in the guest cabin out back, on our property. That's when everything started to get strange. Richard, who had always been reserved with Alex, treating him with the disdain he reserved for any man he considered weak or unsuccessful, changed overnight. Suddenly, he started to enjoy Alex's presence. And when I say enjoy, I mean too much. The business trips stopped abruptly. Now, Richard spent his evenings at home, but not with me. He spent his evenings in the guest cabin. "I'm getting your brother in line, Eleanor," he'd say, giving me a condescending pat on the arm, teaching the boy how to be a man, how to run a business. But what I saw wasn't business. I saw whispered conversations in the garden, which stopped abruptly when I approached. I saw long, heavy silences after shared laughter I wasn't part of. I saw the looks they exchanged when they thought I wasn't looking. Long, intense looks that lasted a second longer than normal. And I, foolish, desperate to keep my life intact, would tell myself, he's just trying to be friendlier with his brother-in-law. It's a phase. He's just helping my brother. But a woman always knows, doesn't she? Deep in her stomach, in that cold, dark place where the truth hides. She always knows. The tension in the house was palpable. It was like walking on thin glass. Richard grew more distant from me, more irritable, while his friendship with Alexander blossomed. I became a stranger in my own home, a ghost wandering the halls while real life happened elsewhere. That autumn was the longest of my life. The air in Willow Ridge grew heavy, charged with an electricity that didn't come from summer storms. It came from that cabin out back. I felt like an actress in a terrible play. By day, I was Mrs. Whitford, shopping at the market, waving to neighbors, the perfect wife of the perfect man. But at night, I would lie in our enormous cold bed, alone, listening. I would hear Richard's steps on the porch, hear the distracted, "Good night, dear," he'd toss in my direction. And then, I would hear the soft sound of the back door closing and the sound of his steps on the gravel, heading toward the guest cabin, heading toward my brother. I tried to convince myself of every possible lie. They're just drinking whiskey. Richard is being a mentor. I'm going crazy. I was not crazy. I was being methodically destroyed. The humiliation was a slow poison. It was Richard treating me as if I were invisible. It was Alexander avoiding me. His beautiful, guilty eyes unable to meet mine at breakfast. The two men in my life, united by a secret that excluded me, diminished me, turned me into a walking joke in my own home. And then, it happened. It was a Friday, November 22nd, 1963. A date the rest of the country would remember for other reasons. But for me, it was the day of my own assassination. A snowstorm had started early, heavy and wet. The kind of snow that sticks to everything and silences the world. I was supposed to go visit my cousin in Billings for the weekend. Richard seemed anxious for me to go. "Drive carefully, dear," he said, not even looking up from his newspaper. "The roads are getting bad." He didn't kiss me. He barely looked at me. I got in the car, feeling the familiar knot in my stomach. I drove for 40 minutes, the snow piling up, the windshield wipers fighting a losing battle. And then, on the radio, the warning. The main bridge over the Yellowstone River, the only way out of Willow Ridge to the east, was closed. Impassable. I pulled the car over on the icy shoulder. I could wait out the storm in a cheap motel. I could, but something pulled me back. A force I couldn't name. It was the truth, I think, demanding to be seen. I turned the car around. The drive back home was the longest of my life. Every snowflake felt like a warning. When I turned onto our street, the main house was dark. Richard must have thought I was in Billings, but no. There, at the back of the property, through the white curtain of snow, a light was shining. The guest cabin. Thick smoke poured from the chimney. My heart didn't race. It stopped. For one whole second, the world went silent. I parked the car on the street, away from the driveway, and got out. The cold was brutal, cutting my lungs, but I didn't feel it. I walked through the snow. The only sound was my boots sinking, crunch, crunch, crunch. With every step, a denial. It can't be. You're mistaken. They're just friends. You're the fool. Have you ever felt that? That moment when you're about to open a door you know will destroy your life? That second where you'd rather live in the comfortable lie than face the devastating truth? If this story has touched you so far, if you've ever felt the ice of that discovery, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. You'll want to know what I did when that door opened. I reached the cabin's porch. The snow was melting on the entryway floor. The windows were fogged from the heat inside. And then I heard it. It wasn't a business conversation. It was laughter. Low, intimate laughter. The kind of laughter shared in the dark. Two male voices, Richard's voice, deep and hoarse, and Alexander's voice, my brother, my protector. My legs went weak. My stomach turned. I put my gloved hand on the cold brass doorknob. It was unlocked. I opened the door slowly, an inch at a time. The smell hit me first. Spilled whiskey and something else. The smell of sweat and Richard's cologne mixed with my brother's scent. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and there they were. The cabin was small, just one room. There was a double bed in the corner, one with a quilt my grandmother had embroidered. Clothes were thrown on the floor. Richard's shirt, which I had ironed that morning, was tossed over the rocking chair. Alexander's boots were near the fireplace. They were in bed, my husband, and my own brother. They didn't hear me enter, not until I let out the breath I was holding, a sound that was almost a sob, almost a growl. Richard turned first. His eyes, which I once thought were kind, widened. But it wasn't guilt I saw first. It was anger. Anger that I was there. Anger that I had interrupted. "Eleanor!" he hissed, pulling at the sheet. But it was Alexander who broke. He put his hand over his face, as if that could make me disappear, as if it could undo the scene. He was pathetic, weak. "Ellie," he whispered. "Oh God, Ellie." I looked at them both. The man who swore to protect me, and the boy I had protected my whole life. The humiliation was total. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the lie. It was knowing the whole town saw me as the lucky wife, while in my own home, I was the joke. I was the furniture. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the lamp at the wall. I just felt something inside me break. But it wasn't a loud sound. It was the sound of a lake freezing over completely, from one shore to the other, in a single second. The sound of ice turning solid as steel. Richard started to get up, panic finally replacing the anger when he saw my face. "Eleanor, please. It's not what it looks like. I can explain." "Explain," I thought. "Explain what? The logistics? The preference?" I looked at him. I looked at my brother's handsome, terrified face, and then I closed the door, as softly as I had opened it. I left the cabin without saying a word. I walked back through the snow, but the cold didn't touch me anymore. The wind howled, but I didn't hear it. The only sound was the buzzing in my brain. A single word forming over and over. Destroy. On that snowy path back to our house, no, to his house, the new Eleanor was born. She was not innocent. She was not kind. She was cold. She was silent. And she was absolutely strategic. I entered the main house. The silence was deafening, except for the ticking of my grandfather's pendulum clock in the living room. Tick, tock, like a countdown to the end of everything. I took off my snow-caked boots. I took off my soaked coat. I hung it on the rack, just as I would on any other day. I went to the kitchen. I boiled water. I made tea. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was from rage. A rage so pure and cold, it felt like atomic energy pulsing under my skin. About an hour later, the back door burst open. It was Richard. He was fully dressed, his dark blonde hair a mess, his eyes wild. He didn't look sorry. He looked like a cornered animal. "Eleanor, what are you doing? Making tea? For God's sake, say something." I turned, holding the hot cup. The warmth in my hands was the only thing that felt real. I faced him. And for the first time in my life, I truly saw him. Not the man I loved, not the king of Willow Ridge. I saw a weak man, a liar. A man terrified not by what he did, but by being caught. "What do you want me to say, Richard?" I asked, my voice barely sounding like my own. It was hoarse, low. "That, in the cabin." He ran his hand through his hair. "It was a mistake. The boy, Alexander, He's confused. I was trying to help him. The lie was so absurd, so insulting, I almost laughed. He was blaming me. He was implying my brother's weakness was the cause. "Where is he?" I asked. "He's gone," Richard said too quickly. "Packed his bags, took the midnight bus. It's for the best." Of course it was. Alexander, the coward, fled at the first opportunity, left me behind to deal with the wreckage, just like he always did. Years later, as I said, he sought me out. But that's another story. That boy broke that day just as much as I did, but in a different way. He ran. I stayed. Richard took a step toward me, trying to use the charm that always worked on everyone. "Ellie, darling, listen. We can get past this." It was a strange phase, a moment of madness. It meant nothing. "You are my wife. You are what matters." He tried to touch my face. I pulled away. "Don't touch me," I hissed. His mask fell. The anger returned. "Fine," he spat. "Be that way. Sulk. But you remember, Eleanor, who you are. You are nothing without me. This house, your clothes, your position in this town. It all comes from me. So, you are going to swallow this, whatever it is you're feeling, and tomorrow morning you will come down for breakfast, and we will forget this ever happened." He looked at me, expecting me to cry, expecting me to beg. I just watched him. And then I did the smartest thing I have ever done in my life. I nodded, very slowly, and I let one tear roll down my cheek. "You're right, Richard," I whispered. I just need some time. I'm so confused." The relief on his face was disgusting. He saw my tears not as a sign of pain, but as a sign of submission. He thought I was broken. He thought he had won. "That's right, dear," he said, his tone now paternalistic, condescending. "Go to bed. Get some rest. We'll forget this horrible night." He slept in the living room that night, as if he were punishing me. I did not sleep. I sat at the kitchen table, the forgotten tea growing cold beside me, staring at the snow falling outside. And I made a plan. Not a plan of violent revenge. Screaming and breaking plates was what he expected. It was what he knew how to handle. Pain had taught me to be something far more dangerous. Silent, cold, and absolutely strategic. In the weeks that followed, I became the ghost wife. I was a shadow in the house. I prepared Richard's breakfast in silence. I waved as he left for Whitford Timber Co., his pride and joy. He lived for that company, more than he ever lived for me. And that is where he made his fatal mistake. In the second week of December, while Richard was on a business trip, he quickly returned to his old habits, now more arrogant than ever, believing I was too docile to question him. I went to his home office. I had never been in there. It was his sanctuary. It was locked, but I knew Richard. He was arrogant and lazy. The key was under the fern pot next to the door. I went inside. The smell of leather, whiskey, and him made me want to vomit. And there, on his desk, were the company documents, the contracts, the deeds, the tax returns. I had always signed without reading. "Just sign here, dear. It's business stuff. Don't worry your pretty little head about it." But now, I read everything. And my heart, which I thought was broken, gave a wild leap. The Whitford Timber Concern was not just in his name. Everything was in both our names. Richard, in his hurry to protect his assets from taxes or creditors years ago, had made me a full partner. 50-50. He had given me the gun and the ammunition, and in his arrogance, he never imagined I would know how to read the manual. The new Eleanor got to work. While Richard believed I was at home reading poetry or crying into my pillow, I was at the library, not reading novels, but basic accounting and Montana business law books. In Billings, I would take the bus secretly, not to visit my cousin, but to meet with the most ruthless lawyer money could buy, a man who hated men like Richard. At the bank, I wasn't withdrawing grocery money. I was requesting copies of every statement, every transfer for the last 5 years. I acted like the perfect wife. I organized his dinners. I smiled at his friends. "How are you, Eleanor?" Mrs. Gable would ask with pity in her eyes. "You look so pale." "I'm just tired, Margaret. Richard has been working so hard," I'd say, and smile the saddest, most broken smile I could muster. They all bought it. The entire town saw me as poor, fragile Eleanor. betrayed and abandoned, but too loyal to leave. Meanwhile, in my room, under the floorboards, I had a growing box, proof of Richard's trips, receipts for jewelry I never received. And best of all, I discovered Richard's other set of books. He wasn't just a traitor, he was a thief. He had been embezzling small amounts from the company for years. Not much, but enough. Enough for a lawsuit. Enough to break his reputation as an honest man of Willow Ridge. Christmas came and went. I gave him an expensive silk tie. He gave me a set of pearls. I wore them to dinner, feeling as if they were a collar. He thought I was tamed. He had no idea the trap was set. The winter of 1964 was the coldest Willow Ridge had seen in 30 years. The rivers froze, the roads closed, and the air was so still you could hear a branch snap a mile away. Inside the Whitford house, the air was just as icy and still. I moved like a wax figure. Richard, on the other hand, was at the height of his arrogance. With Alexander gone, fled like a cowardly dog, and me, in his mind, subdued and domesticated by the fear of losing him, he felt untouchable. He started making mistakes. He became careless. He left his secret ledger, a black leather journal where he noted his illicit spending and embezzlement, in his sock drawer, believing I would never dare go through his things. I photographed it, page by page. He started taking late-night calls at home, no longer bothering to go to his office. He spoke in low tones, but I heard him. Names I didn't recognize, male names, scheduling meetings in Missoula, in roadside bars. The betrayal with my brother wasn't a moment of madness. It wasn't a strange phase. It was who he was. My brother was just one in a long, long list, and that somehow made it all worse. And better. Worse, for the extent of the lie I had lived. Better, because my lawyer in Billings was rubbing his hands with glee. Mrs. Whitford, he said in our last secret meeting, we have the accounting fraud, which is excellent. But with this, he tapped my detailed notes on the encounters. We have what's called moral leverage. In a small town like Willow Ridge, that's more powerful than any deed. I was almost ready. The financial and legal plan was sealed. But one thing was missing. I didn't just want his money. I wanted his reputation. I wanted every person in Willow Ridge who looked at me with pity, who called me poor Eleanor, to see who he really was. I needed proof that not even the most powerful man in town could deny. And Richard, in his infinite arrogance, handed it to me. It was late January. Richard was organizing the annual Timberman's Ball, the biggest social event of the year in Willow Ridge. It was his event. He would rent the main ballroom at the town hotel, invite state politicians, and preen like the king he thought he was. I was helping him with the guest list, my dutiful wife role. Don't forget Mayor Evans, dear, he said, not looking up. Of course, Richard. He stopped writing, looked at me, and smiled. That condescending smile that made me want to rip his teeth out. You know, Eleanor, he said, taking my hand. His skin was hot and damp. I'm proud of you. You handled that mess. With Alexander, with real class. You're a strong wife, a real wife. He was praising me for swallowing the greatest humiliation of my life. He thought my silence was loyalty. That night, I knew I had to act before that ball. I needed to destroy the king before his coronation. I needed one last piece of proof. The following week, he announced he was going to Seattle for 3 days. Big equipment deal, dear. Going to make us millions. I knew it was a lie. The second day he was gone, I hired a private detective from Billings, an expense that was worth every penny of the money I had been secretly saving. He's not in Seattle, I told the man on the phone. He's in Helena, at a hotel called the Copper Latch, room 301. Find out who he's with. The detective called back 24 hours later. Mrs. Whitford, he said, his voice weary from having seen it all. You were right about the hotel and the room. And? I asked, my hand gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles were white. He's not with a woman. It's a young man, a boy who works in the state senator's office. I got the photos. They're clear. Do you want them? Yes, I said. Print all of them and send the bill to my lawyer. I had everything. The fraud, the embezzlement, the adultery, the immoral conduct, as they called it back then. Something that would destroy his reputation with the conservative politicians he so badly wanted to do business with. I had the secret ledger. I had the photos. And I had a hatred so cold and dense, I could have built a house with it. I waited for him to return from Seattle. He came back tan, even though Seattle in January is famous for rain, not sun. He brought me a gift, an ugly silver brooch. "For my patient wife," he said, kissing my forehead. I smiled, and I set the date. Wednesday, January 29th, 1964. 3 days before his big ball. The day his accountant would be in town to close the fiscal year's books. The day I would destroy Richard Whitford, not with a scream, but with a signature. It was Wednesday, January 29th, 1964. The air was so cold it crackled. I woke before the sun, as always. I dressed with a care I hadn't taken in months. Not in one of my housewife dresses, but in my best charcoal gray wool suit, the one I saved for funerals. It seemed appropriate. I did not make breakfast. Richard came down the stairs at 8 o'clock sharp, adjusting his tie, ready for his big day with the accountant. He stopped at the foot of the stairs when he saw me sitting in the living room with my handbag and my coat. "What's this, Eleanor? Are you going out? I need you to make coffee for Mr. Henderson." I looked at him. The same pendulum clock marked the seconds. Tick, tock. "I'm not making coffee today, Richard," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I'm going to the office with you." A flash of irritation crossed his face. "Don't be ridiculous. You'll be bored. It's business." "Nevertheless," I interrupted, standing up. "I'm going." There was something in my tone, something he hadn't heard in months, something he had never heard. It wasn't a request. It was a command. He frowned, confused by the shift, but too impatient to argue. "Fine, fine, but stay quiet and don't get in the way." We drove to the Whitford Timbercomer's office in silence. Dirty snow was piled on the sides of the street. The people of Willow Ridge hurried past, heads down. When we entered the office, his secretary, a young woman named Martha, seemed surprised to see me. "Mrs. Whitford, how nice to see you." "Hello, Martha." Richard marched into his office, the big corner one with the glass window overlooking the sawmill. "The throne," as he called it. "Bring us coffee, Martha. And where's Henderson?" "He's waiting in the conference room, Mr. Whitford." "Excellent." Richard entered his office and sat in his big, expensive leather chair. He loosened his tie, already in king mode. I followed him in. But I did not sit in the visitor's chair. I stood near the door. He looked at me, annoyed. "What is it, Eleanor? You want to say something?" "No," I said. "I'm just waiting." "Waiting for what?" Just then there was a knock on the door. It wasn't Martha with the coffee. It was 2 men I had never seen. One was my lawyer from Billings, Mr. Harris, a tall, thin man with hawk's eyes. The other was the local sheriff, Patches Brody, who looked very unhappy to be there. Richard rose from his chair, the confusion turning to anger. "Harris? What the hell are you doing here? And Brody, what's wrong?" Mr. Harris stepped forward, opening his leather briefcase. He placed a set of papers on Richard's polished mahogany desk. "Mr. Whitford," Harris said, his voice sharp, "we have been retained by Mrs. Eleanor Whitford. This is a court order." The color drained from Richard's face. He looked at the papers. Then he looked at me. "Eleanor, what is this? What kind of joke is this?" I met his gaze with the calm of someone who has already died once, the calm of a frozen lake. "I took from you what you would have taken from me," I said, using the exact words I had rehearsed for weeks. "Take what?" He laughed, a high, nervous sound. "My company? You can't touch my company. You don't know anything about business." "I know accounting," I said, my voice low. "I know about fraud. I know about the books you keep in your sock drawer." His face. Oh, I will remember that face until the day I die. The arrogance shattered, replaced by pure, abject panic. He glanced at his desk drawer. You, he started to snarl. "I also know about morals," I continued, as Mr. Harris placed the second set of documents on the desk. "I know about trips to Helena, the Copper Latch Hotel, room 301. Sheriff Brody, who had been quiet, looked away, embarrassed. "And," I said, delivering the final blow, "I know about the guest cabin, and about Alexander." Richard collapsed into his chair. He was no longer pale. He was gray. "Mrs. Whitford," Mr. Harris said, taking control, "owning 50% of the stock and with irrefutable proof of criminal fraud and embezzlement, is legally dissolving the partnership and assuming full control of the Whitford Timber Co. assets, effective immediately. That's a lie, Richard shouted. She's a stupid woman. She doesn't know anything. We have the photos, Mr. Whitford, Harris said coldly, tossing a brown envelope onto the desk. Of Helena, and of your secret ledger. Sheriff Brody stepped forward. Richard, I'm sorry, but the judge signed off. You need to vacate the premises. Mrs. Whitford is the sole proprietor now. Proprietor? He whispered, staring at the papers as if he didn't understand the word. Martha was standing in the doorway, the coffee tray trembling, her eyes wide. She had heard everything. I walked to the desk. His desk. My desk. I picked up the ugly silver brooch he gave me and put it in his suit jacket pocket. You'll need this to pawn, Richard. You have nothing left. He looked at me, the man who was the king of Willow Ridge. And there was nothing there, just a pathetic, broken, exposed man. Eleanor, please, he whispered, his voice cracking. Don't do this. I love you. I laughed. It was the first time I had truly laughed in a year. A dry, ugly sound. You don't even know what that word means. Get out of my chair. He tried to fight, of course. In the weeks that followed, he tried to sue me. But the evidence was too strong. The accounting fraud ruined him. The rumors about his meetings with young men destroyed him socially. The scandal was the only thing people in Willow Ridge talked about that winter. The Timberman's Ball was canceled, obviously. In a few weeks, Richard was a laughingstock, without a company, without a good name, without a home. The judge granted me the divorce and the house, and without me. Many judged me. Mrs. Gable from the bakery said I was merciless. Some said I should have just left and let him be. But I learned something that the Montana cold teaches well. When someone tries to destroy you, you don't run. You get stronger. You get colder. You become the winter. I remade myself. I took over the Whitford Timber Co. People laughed at first. A woman running a timber company? But I learned fast. I hired loyal men. I fired Richard's useless friends. In 5 years, I had doubled the profits. In 10, I was one of the wealthiest women in the state. I became a woman who was respected, feared, and, finally, free. I never married again. I never trusted blindly again. But I lived, and my dears, I lived very well. If you've made it this far, thank you for listening. Old age has given me the courage I lacked in my youth to tell this story. But now you tell me, what would you have done in my place? Leave your opinion in the comments. I read as many as I can. And if you like stories of strength and overcoming, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to tell me where you're watching from. I love to see how far we've traveled today. Hit the bell so you don't miss any new stories and explore the other videos here on the channel. Until next time, my dears.